scratch, wampum, dough, sugar, clams, loot, bills, bones, bread, bucks, money. Money is, at its essence, that measure.
That's the sound of an ice crisp beer going down my throat. Once it hits your lips, we encourage you to crack a beer, strap in, and get ready. Because I am Jamie G of the Joe Blow Football Show. He is Magnum Mills of the Joe Blow Football Show. And together, we are doing literally the Ozark Podcast. Mills, walk them through just what the hell we're going to be doing on this thing.
We're the Ozark Podcast because it was available on social media and will help you connect with us. And what we're going to do here is we have this little episode where we introduce ourselves, tell you what we're going to do. Then we're going to do fairly short episodes where we cover the first 3 seasons. Then we're going to do a preview for season 4. And then after season 4 drops, a couple days after it initially drops, we're going to cover the first half of that season, either the first 3 or 4 episodes. Then we're going to cover the remaining episodes from that season 4 part 1 block. And then finally, we'll wrap it up and look forward to what we want from the final 7 episodes that will be released later in the year in that second part of season 4, that season 4.5, as you would.
Absolutely. And one important thing for our viewers to note, I have seen all 3 while Mills is still watching them and chipping away, nearing an end. So he will not have seen ahead with some of the things we're getting ready to discuss. Some of it he has, but he'll have fresh insight into taking this thing in, where for me, it's been a little bit. And Mills, speaking of that, let's talk about what got us into this show, right? So I'll go first. For me, I just got tired of people being like, have you watched Ozark? And you ever have one of those shows where you're like, no, and initially it was like, I don't know if I'm going to be into this, man. Bateman in a serious role with the total lead here. And then it was like, okay, but he is executive producing this. He's taking on some directing work. Maybe that could be cool. And it just got to be where enough people that I trust with their opinion was like, you need to watch this thing. And I started watching it. And it was a weird thing for me, Mills, because at first it was like, not just, I'm going to say it's dark, but that I mean visually when you watch it, the lighting on the set, it's got this bluish kind of grayish tint at all times, and I think it's intentional, obviously, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why we think so. But at first it was a lot to kind of take for me, and it didn't really work. But this was a series to me, and we'll start with season 1, obviously, but it got better almost every episode, and before you knew it, I was full blown in a binge mode, and really enjoyed it. Very, very excited about season 4, season 4.5, and what exactly is going to happen with our one of our favorite criminal families in the Birds. So that was really my introduction. I watched season 2, and then season 1, season 2 was already out. Watched season 2, had to wait for season 3. Watched season 3 when it came out, and then here we are. So as we mentioned, Mills, you are in the midst of this right now. Walk us through kind of where you are with taking in Ozark here on the Joe Blowzark, baby. Couple of Brozarks.
Well, not to shamelessly plug, but we had just been covering the 15th season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on our podcast, Night Pod Cometh, which you can find on social media, favorite podcast streaming platform by searching for Night Pod Cometh. Good times. We'll probably be circling back around to some other Sunny episodes, but we finished that up and we're having a good time. So I asked Jamie G, what could we possibly do next? And one thing he said was Ozark, and we looked it up, and it just so happened that there was a new batch of episodes coming out. And it's a show that, again, there is a little bit of a backload, 30 episodes, 3 seasons, 10 episodes, a little bit under an hour a piece. So it's a little bit of a lift, but it's not crazy. You're not watching 24 or something here. Like, this is doable. So, I had kind of heard of it before. Obviously I had Netflix for a long time, and I was a big Arrested Development fan. But when I heard it, it was basically like, okay, yeah, so they're going to do their Breaking Bad thing, and they already have a relationship with Bateman because of, that time they had featured the Arrested Development revival. But and that was fine. At that point, I hadn't really, I didn't even really get into House of Cards until pretty late in the game. So I really had initially had Netflix basically to kind of binge other TV shows. I hadn't done a lot of their original content at the time. So, I just kind of one of those things. It came out, I knew it was there, I put it in my queue. It had been in my queue forever, and I just never really got around to it. I feel like I tried to start the first episode once, and it's just a little slow and kind of dark, and I was just like, all right, kind of this, whatever. And I just never circled back around to it. So that was basically it until you brought it up. But again, I've had a pretty good track record, I feel like, of when I've gotten into a show kind of late in the game before the last season or two, whatever. And even if it hasn't worked out, I've always really enjoyed it. And based on what I've seen so far, about halfway through season 3, I feel this is the juice is worth the squeeze here. The riverboat is worth the ride, as you'd say. Gonna catch some catfish.
Magnum Mills, as we go through, episode 1 and introduce this thing, we're excited to bring episode 2 of the Ozark podcast, which we will break down the entire first season. As we get through this thing, Magnum Mills, what are some of the goals you have, and what are some of the things you're hoping for with this podcast?
Just again, the fact that there was, just not a lot of people talking about the show, but according to Netflix, a lot of people watch it. So I think one of the main things is that you struggle a little bit with the podcast in the binge format, because very few people, let's face it, if you have access to all the episodes, are going to sit there, watch an episode, and then stop and listen to a podcast. Maybe if that's how your life schedule works and you can only watch one per day, then you kind of listen at work or on the way to work the next day or something, maybe that'll work for you. But let's be honest, a lot of people on the weekend, they get in there, they binge the whole thing, and then it's kind of tough from a podcasting standpoint, because you don't want to try to jam an entire season into one episode. But on the other hand, people probably aren't going to sit there and listen to each individual episode until maybe sometime way in the future, when a couple of years from now, when they're all of a sudden watching it like, oh, this is cool, I want to really get into this show. So you want to kind of find a way to do both. So what I think we're going to do is, kind of as we cover season 4, we're going to take the first part, like I said, we're going to do a preview episode, and then when it comes out, we'll check out the first chunk episode, the second chunk, and then preview it. And I think the key is we want to get people who have been watching this, but they haven't seen it in a long time, let them kind of get back into it. Like, the goal, I think, would be that get people kind of hyped. You watch season 4 and you're like, oh, people, you haven't seen it in a couple of years, that you're feeling pretty good about it. So then after you kind of watch this first half of season 4, you listen to the podcast, you want to go back out, rewatch the show, get ready for the last 7 episodes. Hopefully, they stick the landing, and you're like, oh man, like, I really had fun in 2022 watching Ozark, listening to the Ozark podcast, and hey, 2022's already fucking with us. Like, we thought it was going to be the cool one out of the 2020. Like, no, they just took Bob Saget. Like, they ain't fucking around, man. Like,
rest in peace, Bob Saget, man. That sucks. That's a big bummer. We're gonna pour one out for you, man. That sucks big time. This is going to be a big storyline of 2022. I think we're going to see a lot of new television, movies. I'm hoping for a big boom this year as things got back to filming and producing in 2021. But no doubt Ozark's going to be a big one here. And to be honest with you, I like how they decided to do season 4, almost a la Sopranos, where you come back for that little mini. And honestly, they took a 14 episode season and split it into 2. And so it's almost 1.5. I really like the idea of doing the 7, and then there'll be some time, and then later this year we'll get the final 7. That's both from a marketing standpoint and just from a viewership standpoint. I think it works really well, and it's pretty cool. We're excited to break it down here on the Ozark podcast. Magnum Mills, where can these fine folk follow us and make sure they don't miss? You don't only want to get the Ozark podcast, right? You want to check out what's going on with the Night Pod Cometh. Make sure we got all of the shit you want for Sunny. We got some exciting stuff coming. Pretty excited about continuing doing that. Who knows? Maybe we'll do some more podcasts on other shit that's cool out there in the world. But don't sleep on all the free content for fantasy football, dynasty football, survivor, gambling, betting, you name it, when it comes to the Joe Blow Football Show. Magnum Mills, what am I forgetting? I mean, what do I know? I'm only an MD and an Esquire, the 5th.
Well, I mean, we're probably never going to get to do my ultimate, like, we're not going to get to do the Mike Tyson Mysteries podcast, although I would really somehow love to get to that one that day. But no, realistically, we're on social media, your Twitter, your Instagram, your whatnot. Just look for Ozark Podcast. That's us. And if you have any feedback or whatever, you can just send it to ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. We're from the Joe Blow Football Show. You can find all of our content there at joeblowfootballshow.com. Same thing on social media. We're there at Joe Blow Show. And like Jamie G said, We do a lot of fantasy football, dynasty, wagering, DFS content. Find all that at Seize the Gap FF on social media. And as I said before, we've been covering It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on our podcast. Find it at The Night Pod Cometh on your favorite podcast streaming platform. And we're on social media at Night Pod Cometh. This has been the first episode of the Ozark Podcast. Check back next time very soon to see us break down season 1 of Ozark. I'm Magnum Mills, that's Jamie G, and make sure your money is clean.
Can't pay my automobiles. Stacking bills like Marty Bird.
That's pretty good.
I'm so fucking focused. Yeah.